Both Fletcher and Edmund were excelling in their passions. Fletcher was a straight-A student whom his teachers adored. Edmund had maxed the creative skill and was finding his preferred style of art. Emily cleaned the house spotless because Fletcher asked for a guest to come over after school. She was very emotional since the friend that Fletcher was bringing over was a girl and she thought she had more time until the twins were girl crazy. Fletcher and Susan played with dollhouse outside. They pretended that the figurines were their older selves, and they got married and lived happily ever after. The more time he spent with Susan, the more he longed for that to be his reality. Fletcher was so smitten with Susan that he gifted her one of his favorite books. He never gave away his books, not even to his twin. But Susan was special. Edmund often felt left out when Susan was over at the Bennett residence. His mama tasked him with keeping an eye on the young lovebirds. He silently whereupon while Fletcher and Susan joked and giggled together. After a while of Edmund's spying, Fletcher asked his twin if he could go somewhere else so he and Susan could hang out, just the two of them. They talk about everything together, from their childhoods to their dreams for adulthood to their biggest fears. Nothing was a secret from each other. The day had finally come for Agatha to age up into a child. It was a bittersweet time for Emily, but the most overwhelming emotion was relief. Clyde soaked up a few last-minute cuddles with his baby child before she would be too big to pick up anymore. Happy birthday to Agatha. She blows out her candles and wishes for so many adventures in her next phase of life. Agatha's childhood trait is that she is a daredevil. Her childhood aspiration is to be a rambunctious scamp. Agatha and Susan became friends after her birthday party. Susan already felt like part of the family. Clyde and Emily sat in silence the night before they would be aging up into adults. The thought of growing old was both terrifying and comforting. At least they would always have each other. Happy birthday to Emily and Clyde. Their journey in life has only just begun. Young adulthood had presented many challenges, but that would be minimal to what they would face during adulthood. Fletcher began to do more chores around the house on nights that Susan came over after school. He wanted to impress her so badly and sweep her off her feet. Fletcher continued to be the odd man out with the Bennett children, although it was self-imposed. He was too busy with books and Susan. This grew the sibling bond of Agatha and Edmund that much closer. They were each other's best friend. Fletcher had a hard time sleeping because he was worried about Susan in the orphanage. To help ease his worries, he read books of romance and imagined he and Susan safe and sound with a family of their own. On days that Susan wasn't at the Bennett home, Edmund was stuck with the cleanup since Fletcher had nothing to prove. Little did he know, his mum just asked his dad to go upstairs for adult time. Intimacy between the married couple was few and far between because of their busy schedules. That made this time together all the more special. Edmund and Agatha spent much of their time together after school. Agatha had an interest in drawing, so Edmund gave her pointers to be successful. Agatha wasn't very good, but Edmund encouraged her anyway. One night, Fletcher shared with his twin brother that he was going to sneak out of the house while their parents were asleep to spend more time with Susan. Edmund promised to keep Fletcher's secret and will vouch for his twin if their parents suspect something is afoot. They officially became best friends that night. Fletcher was very grateful for his brother. Fletcher and Susan met on the edge of the river over by the docks. Susan was happy to spend the night away from the orphanage. Once at their destination, Fletcher finally shares his feelings with Susan. He tells her that he has only read about love in books, but the way it is described, he feels for Susan. She expresses the same sentiments. That night, the young lovebirds spend the night on the dock and look up at the stars. They fantasize about the life they will have together once they are older. Clyde apologizes for being away so much in recent years due to his woodworking business being successful. He informs her that he has made enough money to be home more with she and the kids. Emily is over the moon to have her husband back in a greater capacity. She missed him every second he wasn't by her side. The couple celebrated their newfound time together with a dance in the kitchen. They had done this dance so many times before, but somehow still felt like the first time. This time felt different, almost as if opening up new possibilities. In only a few years, their children would be out of the house, and only they would remain. They would be okay, and even more in love. Fletcher asked Suzanne to spend time with him at the beach, almost like a first date. He and Suzanne were too young to court, but he wanted his future intentions to be known. Suzanne felt quite emotional that Fletcher had planned anything at all. Nobody in all her life had cared about her or made her feel important. She didn't deserve Fletcher's love and acceptance. Fletcher taught Suzanne how to fish. He had only learned a few years prior from his father, but he was a sponge of knowledge, so he retained everything at ease. Suzanne was a fast learner, and this bonded them even more. The two children built a sand castle together. Suzanne wanted to build what their dream house would look like. She had never had a house of her own before, so they took their time to make it perfect. Fletcher always grew up in a loving home and never knew anything else. He couldn't imagine living in Suzanne's circumstances. He didn't care about inventing things or reading books anymore. His new dream was to make Suzanne feel happy and safe. Fletcher read the holy book in hopes that it would help guide him during this difficult time like it had his father so many years ago. It brought him little comfort, and he felt more hopeless. He cried himself to sleep most nights because he didn't want to leave the love of his life alone in this world once again. Suzanne had already dealt with so much loss and sadness in her life, and he didn't want to add to that by going to war. He kept on a brave face when he was around Suzanne. She had been the source of his comfort and happiness for years, so he vowed to return the favor during this difficult time. Now that they were able to express their love through physical affection such as kissing, Fletcher had never seen Suzanne beam with such happiness. She doted on him all day long. Little did Fletcher know, Suzanne was also putting on a brave face for her boyfriend. In the inside, she was crumbling into pieces. She smiled through the pain to make Fletcher's last days at home happy. Clyde had gone through a whirlwind of emotions since he received his letter of deployment. He was heartbroken to be leaving his wife, but he was relieved that he would be able to keep an eye on the twins to keep them out of danger. As the departure date drew closer, Emily had to explain the unfortunate situation that the men would soon face. Agatha didn't understand why they had to fight for their country and was scared for them. Agatha could see the toll the war was taking on her mother, so she put her own feelings aside to keep her mother in good spirits. She made it her goal to make her mother smile at least once a day while the boys were gone. In case Clyde did not return from the war, he wanted to make sure that his girls were taken care of. He fixed all of the appliances in the house so his girl did not ever have to lift a finger. Suzanne noticed the holy book on Fletcher's bedside table and decided to get it a read. She desperately needed something to believe in and pray to in order to get through the war without her dear Fletcher. One night soon before the Bennett men would be leaving for the war, the ground outside of the residence was covered with ice. They made the most of the situation by skating together on the ice. For just a moment, the star-crossed teenagers forgot how dire their situation was and enjoyed the laughter and the stares of longing. It would be years before they could enjoy each other's company again. The moment ended too quickly, and realization of what was to come overcame Suzanne. She sobbed at how unfair life was. She loved Fletcher too much to say goodbye to him. Fletcher reassured his girlfriend that everything would be okay. He was intelligent and would find a way to survive. He would make it home to her, and they would get married and have children. To show how confident he was that he was coming back to her, he gave her a promise ring. He told her to look at this ring whenever she missed him. He told her that if love were enough, he would stay here with her. The couple spent the rest of the evening in each other's arms. They reminisced on their love story with both tears and giggles. Fletcher was determined to be back where he belonged, which was by Suzanne's side. Suzanne woke Fletcher up later that night. She couldn't sleep and wanted to feel closer to him. He would be deployed in less than a week and wanted to give him the most special parting gift. In normal circumstances, they would have waited to consummate their love for one another until their wedding night. Their future together was uncertain, and she couldn't let him leave without showing how much she loved him. They made love that night. Edmund was the last of the boys to turn to God in hopes to give him a sense of purpose. It was comforting to know that when he met his end, his soul would rest in heaven. Agatha tried to pull her best friend out of his sadness. To do this, she boosted his art and talked about his future as an artist, as pure as her intentions were. This only made Edmund more upset. The night before the Bennett men's deployment, Clyde and Emily cuddled up on the couch and savored what could be their last night together in this lifetime. Emily shared her fears of losing him. Clyde reassured his wife that all three of them would come home to her and Agatha. He would keep their boys safe. He promised her. The couple chose to focus on their love instead of the terrifying uncertainty of the future. If Clyde doesn't make it out of the war, she wants to remember this night as a happy memory, not one where they spent the night crying. Clyde asked his beautiful wife for one last dance as a parting gift. They swayed there together in each other's arms and time stood still. They were the only two people in the world and their love solved everything. Emily sure would miss him. The next morning came too quickly for the Bennett family. Emily held her eldest child in her arms and told him to look after his brother. Fletcher promised he would. Emily held on extra long to the son. I always needed more love from her. She worried most for him because he wasn't as resilient as his brother. She told him she loved him more than the moon and the stars. The young lovebirds cried in each other's arms, not wanting to let go. They had such a bright future together as lovers and would be devastated if it were cut short. They shared one final kiss that said what words couldn't. Edmund said goodbye to his little best friend. He worried that she would burn herself out by burdening herself with the responsibility of everyone else's feelings, and not take care of her own. Clyde saved his last goodbye for his baby child. He desperately hoped he would see her grow up and walk her down the aisle someday. Agatha promised her father that she would pray for him every night before bed. Fletcher walks away from his childhood home and from the love of his life. He hopes to return and propose to Suzanne. Edmund leaves behind the people he loves most in the world. He worries that he is the weakest of the Bennett boys and will not survive such a scary ordeal like war. Clyde leaves behind the beautiful life he has made with his soulmate. He hopes to return from war, but has made peace that he has lived a good life. For now, the Bennett household was a family of 3. The girls were devastated to lose Fletcher, Edmund, and Clyde. They wept as they watched the boys leave. The Bennett boys entered their war camp. It is now time to spin the wheel for each man to determine their fate in the war. First, we spin for the patriarch of the Bennett family. Clyde will survive the war. Next, we have the eldest Bennett child. Will Fletcher return to Suzanne? Unfortunately, Fletcher will perish during the war. Lastly, we have our spare. Will he expire alongside his brother, or will he become the heir? Edmund will be the new heir.